Photographer David J. has spent the past 8 years documenting the impact of breast cancer on the bodies of women under the age of 35. While the portraits show the scars of the disease, they also tell tales of survival. And joining us now for more on the SCAR Project. In New York, the aforementioned David J., photographer and the creator of the SCAR Project. In Cincinnati, Ohio, Jocelyn Whitfield Banks, cancer survivor and founder and CEO of the website mummyhasbreastcancer.org. And in Edmonton, Alberta, Sylvia Sue, cancer survivor and a winner in the Breast Film Festival for her short film, Dear Sister. And it's good of all three of you to join us on TVO tonight. We're really grateful for your time. I want to, just for the purposes of setting up our conversation, play some tape, a little behind the scenes here, and then we'll come back and chat. Roll tape, please.
I've been shooting fashion for 20 years.
My normal style as a fashion photographer, the pictures are often dimly lit. They're almost always rather sensual.
But the subject matter and the experience is a lot different doing the SCAR project. There's something much deeper going on. There's a lot more at stake here.
From the very beginning, I wanted the SCAR project pictures to be very, very raw and just very real. Kind of a warts and all approach.
She with red hair and the white hazmat jumpsuit. We are spilled. We are spilled.
It obviously touched a nerve in the people who saw it, and the response is really beautiful.
Okay, David, how did the SCAR Project come into your head?
Yeah, you know, I had started shooting the SCAR Project about 8 years ago when a very, very dear friend of mine was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was about 29 years old. And, you know, I had known her since she was young, 16 or so. She used to be a model, and I had just shot her 100 times since then. And within about 2 weeks of her diagnosis, they did a mastectomy and removed her breast. And it was obvious that it was never going to be the same after that. And it basically dragged her in the studio there in Sydney, Australia, where we were both living. And kind of took this twisted Calvin Klein-ish picture of her just standing there in a pair of jeans and no shirt, the big scar running across her chest where her breast used to be. And, you know, there was no intention at the time. There was no SCAR project. There was really, I just felt I just needed to take the picture. I suppose as a photographer, it's just part of my life to kind of document the things that happen and the impact they have on the people I love.
Sure. What were you trying to capture? What kind of characteristics were you trying to capture in the pictures?
Just something very, very honest. Just this very honest reaction to the current state of her life and the change that had occurred and the way that it had affected her.
Were you trying to make, I mean, you told us in the video with the earlier pictures, you wanted to create a kind of a beauty and a seductiveness and something beautiful with your previous work. Were you aiming for that with these pictures?
No, I really wasn't. In fact, just the opposite. I really wanted to do something that was just completely honest and raw. And as I'm sure you know, fashion, as you see it in the magazines and on television, is absolutely not honest. It's completely premeditated and really just meant to be enjoyed for what it is. The SCAR Project, I wanted to be just very honest, and it wasn't I never intended to take beautiful pictures of women with breast cancer. I really just wanted to take honest, raw, accurate pictures of women with breast cancer, because I kind of felt like anything else was just doing a disservice to everyone who would look at the images.
Well, I can tell you that they are, and let's talk to two of the people who are involved in this. Sylvia, I'll start with you. How did you originally connect with David on this project?
So I had just recently got diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had a choice to do a lumpectomy and mastectomy, and it was a really difficult decision. So I went online and I started searching for mastectomy photos, and I found David through a forum.
We are taking a look at your pictures as we speak, and tell us why you wanted to participate in this.
I wanted to participate in the SCAR project. I'd kind of come to terms with dealing with mortality, having this breast cancer diagnosis, and not exactly knowing how long I was going to be on Earth. So I kind of thought in my mind if I could kind of leave something behind and participate in something greater, I wanted to be involved in that.
Can you tell us how old you are, Sylvia?
I'm 30 now. I was 25 when I was diagnosed.
25. My goodness. How did you get that news?
How did I get it? Well, it was a shock to me. I had felt the lump before, quite a few months before, but I didn't get the diagnosis until I was 25. So it was a shock. Like when I look back at it and see that I was 25, I was like, wow, I was really, really young. But at that time, I just dealt it with it the best that I could.
Let me ask you a bit of an artistic question here, insofar as we mentioned off the top that you chronicled your own story in your own short film, which did win an award, and then you went on to participate in David's project as well. Can you compare the two different experiences as you wanted to tell the story?
Right. So I did the whole film. It was very raw, so a lot of raw footage. I wasn't detailing it or chronicling it to produce something. In the end, it just came together and created a short film. So it's very raw footage, and I think it captures everything, the tears, the realness of it, me being bald. With the SCAR project, to get up to that point, to be able to stand, half naked in front of a camera, I had to come to terms with what was going on in my life, and I think at that point it was like, okay, I'm ready, and this is me. And at that time, my photos, I'm laughing, I felt great, so yeah.
Gotcha. Jocelyn, let's get you into the conversation. How did you come into contact with the SCAR project?
So the SCAR project came to Cincinnati. They had an exhibit in Cincinnati, and I believe that was 2011 that David and his beautiful photos came. I went to the gala and the gallery opening, and I met David there at the exhibit, and I believe it was one of my friends, Jules, introduced us and said, "You got to meet David. He's awesome. This is awesome." And I believe it was David who looked at me, and we kind of talked for a minute, and he was like, "You should be in this gallery." And at first I was like, "Well, I don't know about all that. I have to think on that." But as the night went on, David talked me into it.
He's a very persuasive guy, isn't he?
He encouraged me, and by the end of the night, I had signed up for it.
Jocelyn, we're looking at a picture of you and your daughter right now, and I wonder why the decision to include your daughter in your photo.
So my daughter is a very big part of my journey. I was actually pregnant with her the first time I had breast cancer, and I was told to terminate the pregnancy. I was told that I needed to start treatment right away, and we took a very long time, second and third opinions, deciding what to do with me. At the end of the day, I decided I was going to keep her, and we were both going to be breast cancer survivors.
And whose decision was it to put her in the pictures?
David encouraged it, and I was all for it.
David, why did you want the daughter in the picture as well?
I just thought it was a really, she's such an important part of Jocelyn's life, as she just said, and I just thought it would be a beautiful part of the image and really complete that that aspect of her situation, And it isn't always just someone going it alone. There's so many times other people that are involved. There's husbands and fathers and mothers and children, and I wanted to try to include some of them. And also in Jocelyn's situation, why one of the reasons I was so interested in having her participate in the project, why I so much wanted to photograph her, as you may or may not know, although African Americans are not the greatest percentage of women with breast cancer, they have the highest mortality rate. And I was aware of that from the very beginning shooting the SCAR project, and I really wanted the SCAR project to be inclusive and accurate in its portrayal of the subjects. And to be honest, I kind of had, I immediately reached out to a few African American women's breast cancer organizations and tried to explain what I was doing, and it was, maybe there was some different cultural barriers in place, and I found it really difficult to get an African-American woman to participate. I had only shot one prior to Jocelyn, and then when I was introduced to her at the exhibition, I thought, "Oh, you're perfect. You have to do this with me," and so I was just really so happy that she wanted to do it. And I think it's really important, and she's a beautiful woman.
Jocelyn, when you saw the photos of you and your daughter, and let's face it, they are very stark pictures, what was your reaction?
Well, my initial reaction was, oh, those aren't very glamorous, or that doesn't capture my best side. Wait a minute. That was my initial reaction. And then I began to study the pictures a little bit more. And I looked at the expressions, and I looked at the physical changes that were evident in me and the expressions on my daughter's face. And it clicked. This is really what my journey's been like. On the outside, I'm bubbly, and I'm having a great time, and life is great. But underneath all those clothes, at the end of the day, there's some scars there, and there's some pain there. And I love that photograph shows that side of me that I don't normally allow the rest of the world to see.
Your website, of course, is called mummyhasbreastcancer.org, which opens up another line of questioning, namely, your daughter, as you've told us, has been a huge part of this journey, but I wonder if there was a part of you that wanted to protect her from that scary image of Mummy without a breast and a huge scar, and how you dealt with that.
So my daughter was 3 years old when my cancer came back. So I've had it, we've done this twice so far. And one thing I came to understand is that the children, our family, they take their cue from us. And I was okay with explaining to my daughter that Mommy had owies and boo-boos, and that, hey, this is what Mommy looks like, but don't worry, this doesn't mean this is what you're gonna look like. So that conversation for me was pretty, I'm a pretty straightforward person, so I didn't have a lot of trouble. But that's not the case for every family and every woman. And so that's kind of a segue into how Mommy Has Breast Cancer got started.
And how old's your daughter today?
She is 10 years old.
She's 10 years old.
She'll be 12 in June. 11 in June.
11 in June. Wait a second, is that the new math
June
there
12.
where you skip by twos? Okay, hang on. And I know this is probably a hard question to answer, but how well or not adjusted to dealing with her mother's cancer do you think she is?
My daughter's very well adjusted. She volunteers at events with us, talking to people about breast health, and showing people models, and explaining to people that Mommy's a breast cancer survivor, and I am too. And so she is very well adjusted. I've instilled in her a spirit of strength and courage, and not one of fear. So I think she's going to be just fine, no matter what happens.
Amen. Sylvia, let me do one more follow-up with you, which is the pictures are incredibly stark. And I wonder what kind of a negotiation did you have to have either with yourself or with David in order to be photographed? I mean, you're out there, ma'am. You are really out there. So tell us about that.
Yes, so I come from a conservative family, so, no standing in front of a camera half naked, which probably most people wouldn't do. But I had to kind of come to terms with it. I saw the photos. I thought they were really beautiful, but very raw. They're really shocking. So I wanted to be a part of it. It didn't happen right away. I just, I kept going back to the photos, and I finally decided, yeah, I want to be a part of this. I kind of want to leave a part of myself behind. So, I had to get to that psychologically, and I had to talk to some of my family members to see if they were okay with it. And if they weren't, then I was just like, I got upset, or it's like, this is not posing nude. This is something greater. It's something else. So, yeah, it was a process. It wasn't just like I saw the photos and wanted to be a part. But it was quite the process.
And at the end of the day, did everybody in the family sign off on it?
To be honest, I don't think everyone in my family knows about it. I don't know if my dad does, to be truthful, but my mom and my brothers do. And David was great with talking, making me feel comfortable in front of the camera and discussing what we would be doing in front of the camera when I got there.
Okay. David, I want you to talk to us, if you would, about that other big breast cancer venture that's happening out there, namely, the Pink Ribbon campaign. And I guess, we've seen examples over the years where people have tried to take a different approach to dealing with breast cancer, one with pink ribbons and teddy bears and that kind of thing. And I wonder what your view is on that approach.
Yes, I think the SCAR Project has a tagline that gets a lot of attention, and that tagline is "Breast cancer is not a pink ribbon." And occasionally people take that to mean that somehow the SCAR Project is against the pink ribbon or something like that, and that's absolutely not the case. I really think that Susan G. Komen, who is the founder of the Pink Ribbon and their organization, and all the other organizations that also use the pink ribbon as their symbol, they have done more for breast cancer research, raised more money, raised more awareness than I or the SCAR Project will ever do. And they know my feelings about that, so I don't think there's any bad blood there. And I know that they're fans of the SCAR Project. I also think that it's important to show the other side of it, the honest side, the reality side. I think it's very important to educate the public, not just about breast cancer, but a lot of things. We don't want to look at these things that are so uncomfortable to look at, whether it be breast cancer or the victims of war or 1,000 other things. And I think it's important that we look at them so we can come to terms with life on the planet and how we engage each other.
Sylvia, any objections on your part to the approach taken by the Pink Ribbon campaign?
The Pink Ribbon campaign, I think it has its place. As David said, it's raised a lot of money and awareness, so I'm not against it. But at the same time, it's not something that I quite relate to, not just because of the pinkness, but also of the audience that it is sometimes targets, which is much older women. So yeah, I do support it. I think they're a great cause, but at the same time, I think that the reality of what breast cancer does and what it is about needs to be shown as well.
And Jocelyn, you're in Cincinnati right now, where, a couple times a year, your football team, the Cincinnati Bengals, show up in pink uniforms and they play the toughest sport in the world in pink, as all part of that campaign. What do you think?
I'm all for it. I think that there are two different approaches, and I think they have they're both equally effective. They both have different goals. The Pink Ribbon campaign is to incorporate the masses, get the guys interested, get the kids, make everyone come together and feel warm and fuzzy and support the cause. Whereas, the goal of the SCAR Project is really to educate people on the psychological or the psychosocial fallout that young women experience from breast cancer. So I think they're both good, and I support both approaches because different strokes for different folks.
Gotcha. David, let me ask you about your approach to this project insofar as, and no disrespect intended to the women that you chose, but they're not quote unquote world famous. So I'm wondering if, for example, somebody like Angelina Jolie, who has, I saw, Jocelyn, I saw that reaction out of the corner of my eye. You're offended that I described you as not being world famous. But I'm sorry, Jocelyn, you're not. Or let me put it this way. You're not as world famous as Angelina Jolie. And that's where I'm going with this question. Everybody knows that she had a genetic predisposition towards breast cancer and therefore took voluntary advanced action to deal with that, a double mastectomy. And I wonder if you either approached her or she approached you, or would you have wanted her to participate in this project?
Not having a celebrity or anyone famous, whether anyone famous, was a very conscious decision from the beginning. I wanted the SCAR Project just to represent the ordinary woman, someone you might see on the street, no one you would necessarily ever see on television. And that's how it's remained. I've shot probably close to 100 women over the past 8 years, and they are the woman living next door to you. You know, and I feel that was just really important. I think having a celebrity there just kind of changes the message a little bit and takes it away from just the importance of, I don't know, just, you know, being a human being.
I take your
just
point.
Relating to the world like everyone else, yeah.
I take your point. There's a woman named Emily that you photographed who, while, again, not as world famous as Angelina Jolie, had the same procedure. We're showing a picture of her right now. What can you tell us about her?
Yeah, Emily has turned out to be kind of the poster child of the SCAR project. She was pregnant, as you can see when I took her picture, and that just seems very, you know, symbolic in so many ways. A woman with no breasts and about to have a child that will not be able to be breastfed. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry if I've gotten confused with some of these women there. As I said, there's been 100 that I've shot and so many more that I've spoken to, but numerous women have chosen to have this prophylactic mastectomy, much like Angelina Jolie had. And I think it's an incredibly difficult decision for a woman to do. This is having a genetic test, the BRCA gene, and anyone out there, Sylvia or Jocelyn can correct me if I'm wrong, but this gene almost guarantees that you're going to have breast cancer at some point. And so these women, although they do not necessarily have breast cancer at the moment, they have this gene, and they have to make a decision whether they want to have their breasts removed with a mastectomy and thereby decrease the chances of having breast cancer to almost nil, or take a chance and see what happens. And taking a chance and perhaps finding it, even finding it early, doesn't guarantee you're going to live. Once it's growing, it can easily take hold, and there's no guarantee they're going to be able to treat it. And so it's a huge decision, and I have just immense respect for these women because they often have to battle their loved ones, their parents, their friends who say, "Oh, you're crazy. Why would you do that? You don't even have cancer." And it takes a very brave woman to go through this. I have a huge amount of respect for Angelina Jolie and any woman who would do this. They've almost said the same thing to me. I want to be here to raise my children.
In our last few minutes here, I do want to point out that the SCAR Project and its photos will be coming to Toronto, to the Edward Day Gallery later this month for a little over a week. And I want to ask our two other guests on the program, Sylvia, to you first. Has breast cancer redefined who you think you are?
So this question is something that I've been kind of thinking about for the last 5 years or so. I've had cancer twice, and it's having it in your mid-20s and trying to struggle with like it taking over your life, but you don't want it to define you as a person. So it's been like this fine balance of going inwards and trying to find out who I really am. And I think I'm at a good point right now, but I wouldn't say it defines who I am, but it is a huge part of my life, and it affects the way I think and how I interact with life.
Do you think a day will come when you stop thinking that there's a part of you that's missing?
In reference to my breast?
Yes.
You know, with the reconstruction process and getting everything that entails in that process, it's helped me to become feeling more whole physically. So I don't feel like there's a part missing. I've gone through with reconstruction now and in the process of a few other surgeries. So I do feel quite whole. I don't feel like I miss that breast. Yeah.
Good. Jocelyn, let me ask you the same question. Has this experience made you redefine how you think of yourself?
I think it has. I know some people say, oh, you don't let the disease define you. And it's not so much that breast cancer defines me, but it has dictated the person that I've become. So it's made me a person who is more confident. It's made me a person who is more giving, who is more caring, who doesn't sweat the small stuff as much. So it has changed me in a lot of ways, and it's made me really appreciate life a lot more than I did before. So, I don't think it's a bad thing, and I will say breast cancer has defined me. It's defined me into an awesome human being. So I wouldn't change a thing.
You wouldn't change a thing. If you had it to do again, you'd still take the breast cancer?
I would. I absolutely would. My life has been so awesome and so full because of the things I've been encouraged to go do after fighting that breast cancer. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be as wonderful. It wouldn't be as grand. It wouldn't be as sweet. I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow. You two are amazing. Sylvia and Jocelyn, it's awfully good of you to join us on TVO tonight. David J., the photographer, the man behind the SCAR project, we thank you for joining us as well. And we remind everybody once again, the Edward Day Gallery in Ontario's capital city, in Toronto, from March 27 to April 6. The photos will be available for viewing. But I gather, David, just tell us in our last 10 seconds, available for viewing but not purchasing, right?
No, the images of the SCAR project aren't for sale. I've always kind of felt that adding any type of financial component could easily dilute or compromise the message of the project.
Understood. I thank the three of you again for appearing on TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.